paranasal sinuses, eyes, teeth, lungs, brain. Mind it, it is non-contagious in nature. The fungal spore site of entry is through nose. Predisposing factors. What are the factors which are responsible? Again, the uncontrolled diabetes mellitus, immunosuppression by steroids, prolonged intensive care unit stay, reused face mask for oxygen delivery, reused tubings, unhygienically prepared swab sticks results in direct inoculation. Comorbidities like post-organ transplant patients and the patients who has malignancy. As far as paranasal sinuses fungal infections are concerned, there are 5 subtypes. 3 are invasive, 2 are non-invasive. Our main concern is invasive, that is acute invasive fungal sinusitis, and that is none other than mucormycosis. How it invades? Nose and paranasal sinuses are invaded by predilection of unilateral involvement of the ethmoid, maxillary and sphenoid sinuses. Mostly in day-to-day practice, what we are seeing, the unilateral involvement of ethmoid, maxillary and sphenoid sinuses. The vascular invasion, the fungus adheres to the internal elastic lamina of the blood vessels, causing thrombosis and results in ischemia and necrosis of the tissue. Coming to the orbital extension, from where it enters from, the mucormycosis enters from nasolacrimal duct or dehiscent medial orbital wall or anterior and posterior ethmoid orifices. As far as brain spread is concerned, it is through orbital apex or traversing vessels or cribriform plate of ethmoid bone or cavernous sinus thrombosis. The cerebral injury which occurs is from the direct extension of fungus or due to internal carotid artery ischemia. Coming to the clinical presentations of mucormycosis, as we all are aware, it enters from the nose. Mostly at the first stage, it affects paranasal sinuses, nose and paranasal sinuses. Then from there, it reaches to the orbit. As the maxilla, dental and ENT are in close approximation, dental part is involved, nose through trachea, bronchus to the pulmonary lungs involvement and cerebral involvement. Covering each and every individually, you see how it presents. The common presentation of mucormycosis when it involves a rhino, means nasal passage, or the paranasal sinuses is nasal congestion, nasal blockage, nasal discharge. The discharge is bloody or brown or black. Local pain on bridge and around the nose. Foul smell starts coming. The erythematous to violaceous to black necrotic scar in nasal cavity is seen and on the palate. One-sided headache. Mind it, I told you, it has got a tendency for the unilateral affection, unilateral frontal, unilateral ethmoid, unilateral sphenoid. So one-sided headache, one-sided facial pain, swelling and numbness. The blackish discoloration over the bridge of nose. So these are the common presentations when mucormycosis affects nose and paranasal sinuses. You can see the nasal endoscopy picture and the epistaxis, the blood. Every day we are seeing such kind of patients and such of findings in our OPD. Now coming to the common presentations, orbital eye, orbital pain is there, swelling around the eyes, blurred or the double vision, headache, facial pain, facial numbness. You can see the pictures, they are depicting very clearly how troublesome might be the symptoms. You see the unilateral involvement, facial swelling, facial numbness must be there, eyes is affected, you see the scar. Now coming to the common presentations, the dental. All are in close proximity. Nose, paranasal sinuses. Coming to the dental, toothache. There is the pain in the teeth, swelling of the gums, bleeding from the gums, loosening of the maxillary teeth. Mind it, it's maxillary teeth. Ulcer over hard palate. So these are the common presentations when mucormycosis affects teeth and dental origin. You see the picture. The hard palate mucormycosis that is affecting hard palate, and here loosening of the teeth and affection of the hard palate. As far as pulmonary is concerned, there may be fever, cough, difficulty in breathing, chest pain, hemoptysis. For cerebral, common presentations are headache and heaviness in the head, irritability, altered mental status, dullness, drowsiness, focal seizures may be there, neuralgic pain may be there, and fever. Coming to the management, mucormycosis is a medical emergency, even when clinically suspected. So, always keep your senses open to suspect mucormycosis. The moment you suspect it's a medical emergency, you take it that way that you have to tackle this situation as early as possible. You have to diagnose this situation as early as possible. You have to treat at the earliest possible to avoid deadly complications. Lab parameters are there: CBC, ESR, fasting sugar, postprandial blood sugar, HbA1c, liver function, renal function with electrolytes, HIV, HbS-Ag, CSF if indicated. Nasal endoscopy is routine day-to-day practice. One has to do it. Black necrotic HR tissue will be visible. Bronchoscopy in pulmonary lesions when it is indicated. X-ray, CT, MR, paranasal sinuses, orbits, brain, chest, with and without contrast. Whatever is the situation, that way we have to decide further. Going further about the sample collection. This is something very important. How to take the samples, because if samples are not properly taken, they won't show mucormycosis, they won't show fungal hyphae, and on the culture there won't be growth of fungus. We will miss the diagnosis, and if we will miss the diagnosis, we won't be able to treat patient properly, and if we won't be able to treat patient properly, we won't have anything in our hand, because it's very deadly fungal infection. So rhino-orbitocerebral, consult ENT surgeon, endoscopic collection of the debrided tissue, biopsy, one portion in sterile water for microscopy and culture, other portion in 10% formalin saline for histopathology. For pulmonary, bronchoalveolar lavage, mini ball, non-bronchoscopic lavage, transbronchial biopsy, CT guided biopsy from lungs, process for microscopy and culture. Whatever is required, whatever is indicated, whatever is essential, the consultant, the doctor in charge, has to decide about what has to be done and what has to be, sample has to be taken. In microbiology, the direct microscopy, fungal culture, serological test, and molecular identification are essential. Definitely, we all are clinicians. There are two groups. I'll come later on. Frontline and very important people who are behind the curtain. I'll just come after few slides. Radiology. Suspected patients should undergo appropriate radio imaging study. Contrast enhanced CT scan with 3D imaging are useful in delineating the extent of the disease, because here it is very important to know the extent of the disease. Once we know the extent of the disease, we have to plan surgery or intervention accordingly. Reconstruction findings. After the 3D imaging, erosion and thinning of the hard palate, mucosal thickening of sinuses with irregular patchy enhancement is an early sign. Enlargement of masticator muscle, changes in the fat planes, all these are very, very important. The other radiological MRI, PNS are the black turbinate sign, fluid levels you will be able to see. But trust me, believe me, we trust all our specialists like radiologists, like pathologists, like microbiologists. Yes, definitely we also look towards the films, we also look towards the reports, and we also look towards the patient. So patient's clinical examination, presentation, examination, pathological report, radiological reports, all together we decide further how to go ahead, what to do. MRI PNS with brain contrast study has to be done. CT lung confused with COVID related shadows. This is something very important. Dr. Pramod is here. We will be going to discuss with him also. Confused with the COVID related shadows, suspect mucormycosis in patients with thick walled lung cavity. Need to differentiate from COVID associated pulmonary aspergillosis, reverse halo sign, multiple nodules, pleural effusion. Coming to the treatment of CAM, COVID associated mucormycosis. Just few minutes pehle, I told you that it's a teamwork. Team approach is required. Few are frontline, few are behind the curtain. ENT specialist, pulmonologist, ophthalmologist, neurologist, maxillofacial surgeon, intensivist. These are the frontline doctors who has to deal directly with the patient, and radiologist, microbiologist, histopathologist. They help us a lot. They guide us a lot. We discuss with them in day-to-day practice about the scans, about the histopath report, about the microbiology report, all the things. So it's not like that a ENT specialist or a neurologist or a maxillofacial surgeon will do individual work and he will be able to win the battle. No, not at all. It's an absolute teamwork. Going further, again, the very important points to remember are control hyperglycemia. Sugar control is a must. Monitor blood glucose level post COVID-19 discharge and also in diabetics. Use steroids judiciously. Correct timing, correct dose and duration. Use clean, sterile water for humidifiers during oxygen therapy. Use antibiotics, antifungals judiciously. Few another points to remember. Do not miss warning signs and symptoms. Be vigilant. Be attentive. I can understand whatever super specialist panelists are here. They are working day and night. Dr. Anil, Dr. Atul, Dr. OP, they are working day and night. We just had discussion. I know it's very difficult to concentrate, but we have to. There is no other way around. So don't miss warning signs and symptoms because it's question of life of the patient. Do not consider all the cases with blocked nose as cases of bacterial sinusitis, particularly in the context of immunosuppression and or COVID-19 patients on immunomodulators. Do not hesitate to seek aggressive investigations. So many times we think that it will be too much for the patient, too much burden on the patient's pocket, but we are helpless. We have to sometimes seek for aggressive investigations as appropriate QH staining and microscopic culture for detecting fungal etiology. Do not lose crucial time to initiate treatment for mucormycosis. Time is very, very precious. Be very particular. Diagnose as early as possible. Start management ASAP. Coming to the treatment, again the control of diabetes and diabetic ketoacidosis. Reduce the steroids if patient is still on steroids with aim to discontinue rapidly. Discontinue other immunomodulating drugs if patient is taking like baricitinib, tofacitinib. Going further, before commencing treatment, few basics, few important points. Insert peripherally inserted central catheter, PICC line or central venous catheter. Maintain adequate systemic hydration, very important. Infuse normal saline before amphotericin B infusion Antifungal therapy should be given for 4 to 8 weeks. Antifungal therapy. Liposomal amphotericin B, preferred treatment, 5 mg per kilogram per day, dilute in 200 cc of 5% dextrose over 2 to 3 hours infusion. Avoid slow escalation. Higher dose 10 mg per kilogram per day may be given in brain involvement. Dr. Atul will be able to tell us better in this context. Advantage of liposomal amphotericin B is less nephrotoxic, better CNS penetration. Disadvantage, it's expensive. Amphotericin B deoxycholate only if cost and availability of L-amphotericin B is an issue, then we can use this molecule. Disadvantage is highly toxic, poor CNS penetration. Injection amphotericin B lipid complex, 5 mg per kilogram per day is the dose, less nephrotoxic than B, amphotericin B. Disadvantage is expensive, possibly less effective than other molecule, especially for CNS infection. Patients who are intolerant to amphotericin B, it's a toxic molecule. Renal function has to be monitored very carefully. Alternative agents are posaconazole, isavuconazole, injections and tablets. Tablets posaconazole 300 mg twice a day on the first day, followed by 300 mg once a day. Tablet isavuconazole 200 mg 3 times a day for 2 days, followed by 200 mg once a day. Going ahead, monitor patients clinically with radio imaging for response, disease progression, and microbiologically also monitoring is essential. After 3 to 6 weeks of amphotericin B therapy, consolidation therapy with posaconazole, isavuconazole for 3 to 6 months. Believe me, the total cost of treatment is too much. Read global guideline on treatment of mucormycosis for further detailed information if you are interested in Lancet. Surgical debridement. Extensive surgery is needed to remove all necrotic material. Endoscopic sinus surgery, turbinectomy, maxillectomy, partial or total, zygoma debridement, debridement of orbital floor, walls, plus localized debridement of necrosed tissue in early localized orbital disease, exenteration of eye. Dr. OP will be able to tell us better in this regard. Anterior table debridement, posterior table crenalization, debridement of osteomyelitic skull bone. It is a teamwork. Again, without team, one cannot win the battle. It is a teamwork involving ENT surgeon, maxillofacial, Dr. Vilas Navaskar is with us, Dr. OP Agrawal, ophthalmologist, neurosurgeon, neurophysician, Dr. Atul Tapadia, anesthesiologist, intensivist, plastic surgeon, all has to work together as a team. As we are aware, mucormycosis causes lot of loss of function due to sometimes missing jaw, patient is unable to chew, patient is unable to swallow, facial aesthetics get deformed. So for this purpose, prosthesis, reassurance to the patient, and till all this is there, interim solutions. But trust me, before all this, our basic aim is to save patient's life. How to prevent this infection? As poorly controlled diabetes is the major issue, good glycemic control during management of COVID-19 patient is a must. Systemic steroids should only be used in patients with hypoxemia. Oral steroids are contraindicated in patients with normal oxygen saturation on room air. If systemic steroid is used, blood sugar should be monitored. The dose and duration of steroid therapy should be limited to dexamethasone 0.1 milligram per kilogram per day for 5 to 10 days. Universal masking reduce exposure to mucorales. Avoidance of exposure to construction sites, moist environment should be kept in mind. During discharge of the patients, advise about the early symptoms and signs of mucormycosis, facial pain, nasal blockage, excessive discharge, loosening of the teeth, chest pain, respiratory insufficiency. Lots of misinformation and leading to misleading things are there. Mucorales are not black fungi. Black fungi are a different category of fungi having melanin in the cell wall. Mucormycosis is not contagious. It does not spread from one person to another. Mucormycosis is not spread by oxygenation, humidifier, and water. The fungi remain in the indoor and outdoor environment. The spores enter the respiratory tract via air. No antifungal prophylaxis is recommended as the incidence is not more than 10% in any COVID-19 cohort. Thanks for kind attention. Now, I would like to have the question answer sessions. There are a lot of questions, queries are there. First and the foremost, as the route of entry is from nose, Dr. Anil Gwaliakar, who is head of the department of Bombay Hospital and working day and night, I was really impressed and hats off to Dr. Anil, the way you are working day and night and saving life of mucormycosis patients. What is the percentage of patients you are seeing in your day-to-day practice nowadays?
Thanks, sir, for such nice presentation. I can tell you that since last 1 year, I have seen only 3 to 4 normal patients which were used to come to me earlier. Now, only patients which are coming, those are of either mucormycosis or mucorpsychosis. So,
Mhm.
I think means in post-COVID scenario, I think every fourth patient or fifth patient is coming with this disease with different percentage. Either it is a mild disease or full blown or moderate grade. It's like that.
Dr. Anil, there is a question from audience. Is Dr. Sanjay Gupta from Indore is asking when to operate, conservative versus surgical. He wants to know when you decide that a
But
patient has to be treated conservatively and when you want to operate.
with very mild symptoms or very early disease limited to little bit of sinus cavity or into nose, we can say that conservative treatment can be there. But I think the debridement is the only solution, whatever it may be. Even the smallest lesion should be debrided, and better is the if it is earlier is the better.
Okay, fine. Dr. Raju Manode wants to know what should be the extent of debridement. I think they are all sitting together and listening this webinar. So Dr. Raju wants to know, as you said about the debridement, he wants to know what is the extent of debridement.
Sir, I stop only when it comes to the cavernous sinus.
Okay, through and through till that point.
Yes.
Great, great,
Because
great.
there is no question of leaving any of the disease part anywhere. Either it may be orbit, it may be infratemporal fossa, it may be anywhere in the paranasal sinus cavities.
All right, all right.
It is not of radical debridement that has to be done.
All right. How do you decide when to go for a closed surgery, means endoscopic surgery, and when you want to open it?
For me, endoscopic surgery is always a choice, because with endoscope you can see each and every nook and corner of the paranasal sinuses, and now with the invention of so many gadgets, we can look up to the skull base.
Okay.
Since we have operated the lateral aspect of the frontal sinus also with the endoscopic surgery, we have operated till the infratemporal fossa, lateral aspect of infratemporal fossa with the endoscopic sinus help of endoscope only.
Dr. Anil, there is a practical problem nowadays about the availability of amphotericin B. Usually, what is the trend? What do you follow? Do you give? I had a discussion with another endoscopic sinus surgeon. He said, first I'm going to give amphotericin B for 2 days, then I'm going to operate. Is it like that?
Yeah, initially we also used to follow this rule only, but now as we don't have amphotericin B, so it's very difficult to admit the patient and operate.
Okay. And what do you say about amphotericin B irrigation and saline irrigation?
I think amphotericin B irrigation is not of very use because I have used in many patients. I don't think that it sticks there. In, Instead of that amphotericin B irrigation, I will prefer the fungizone gel which is coming in the market nowadays.
Sorry for interruption. Subir sir, can you please stop sharing so we can see all panelists equally? Yeah. And Anil sir, your voice is still not loud enough.
I'm very close to my laptop now.
All right, fine. The questions are coming up for Dr. O.P. Agrawal.
Yes.
Dr. O.P. Agrawal, you're comfortable? Can I ask
Yeah,
you,
yeah.
what is about the staging of the mucormycosis
Uh,
when the patient reaches eye clinic?
Once the patient reaches eye clinic, it indicates that the patient is suffering from eye mucormycosis also, because there are very few patients who comes to ophthalmologist in initial stage. So if there are different staging of mucormycosis like stage 1, 2, 3, 4, some divide this mucormycosis in stage 3 stages only, and few divide into 4 stages. There are different thought of schools. If we divide into stage 3, the first stage is the involvement of nose and sinuses. Once the disease progresses to orbit, then it comes to stage 3. And if it approaches to sinus, cerebral to brain, then it is stage 3. Whether we can divide it according to ophthalmic involvement, we can divide it into different stages in eye also. In stage 2, A, B, C, D, like very small involvement which is not there is no sign and symptoms, but if you do MR PNS in orbit and there is very little involvement of orbital medial orbital wall, then it comes to stage 1.
All right.
If there is involvement of leads and ocular muscles with no loss of vision, then it is a stage 2B. And if it is total ophthalmoplegia, that is stage 2C, and bilateral ophthalmic involvement, it is stage 2D. So this is what we can divide. Why we have to divide is because accordingly we have to plan the treatment.
All right, all right. There are very typical question. Mostly now it's an era of telemedicine
Yes.
because of the COVID-19 and everything. Mostly patients are they are really afraid to come to the clinic,
Yes.
and if a patient comes talks to you on telephone, Dr. OP, and during interrogation, is there anything, means few silent points that you are going to ask him or patient is going to tell you? With that, is there any clue that you will be able to diagnose? Yes, he has or she has got a mucor.
Yeah, definitely. Because as Dr. Gwaliarkar rightly said, that there are more of mucopsychosis. So, many patients are talking to ophthalmologists and ENT surgeons, only they are afraid and talk about mucopsychosis because they feel like even a small redness or a small sty on the lids may be looks like mucormycosis. So most of the patients now, what we ask all those patients that they should take the pic of the eye and send to us. But we usually inquire what they are feeling. Most of the patients, they say that number one, they are having unilateral eye ache and headache. That is very important symptoms. Even without eye involvement, patient will give history of severe unilateral headache with eye ache. Sometimes it mimics like migraine, but that patient always give history that मेरे को एक दिन से या दो दिन से ही हो रहा है, पहले कभी ऐसा नहीं हुआ. So that is very important.
It can be because of sinusitis also.
Yes, definitely because
Because mucor has got a tendency to affect unilaterally,
yeah,
as we discussed that unilateral frontal, unilateral ethmoid and sphenoid. So
Yes.
even unilateral sinusitis can lead to such kind of symptoms.
this is a different type of ache. Eye ache and headache. Usually in sinusitis, usually we don't get this type of acute pain. Dr. Gwaliarkar wants to say something.
Yeah, Dr. Anil, please.
What we have seen that patients are having very typical symptoms of numbness, starting with the numbness of the cheek
Cheek, yeah.
or upper lip area, pain.
Dr. Anil, please little bit louder. I know you are tired. You are serving 24/7. I can understand, but
This is the
please
maximum
be a
work I can
little bit louder. Yeah,
But
please.
I was telling that patients have very typical symptoms of hyposthesia,
Yes.
pain over the cheek, toothaches, pain around the eye, pain behind the eye, and
Yes.
this is all because of the involvement of V2 V2 innervation,
Hmm.
causing all these symptoms. And whenever these symptoms comes, it clicks in the mind that it might have
Yeah.
mucormycosis.
Okay, thank you. Dr. OP, next thing about the amphotericin B. Can we give amphotericin B retrobulbar behind the eye?
Yes.
And how
Yes.
frequently we can give it, and what are the indications and what are the results expected out of that?
Yeah, we all ophthalmologists started using retrobulbar or peribulbar amphotericin B. That is transcutaneous peribulbar or retrobulbar amphotericin B. It is given in the dose of 3.5 milligram per ml. Okay, and initially when we started getting lot of patients, we asked our ENT colleague to do face first, that is sinus surgery first, and then we start giving retrobulbar. But once we have started giving retrobulbar, the results of retrobulbar are really very good. We are getting very good results, and the day from where we feel that amphotericin B is not available, so we cannot give systemic IV liposomal amphotericin B. In that case, even I personally, I have discussed with many other ophthalmologists also. There are two thought that this amphotericin B is useful, and some says that it is not useful. But if I talk practically, I am getting very good results. Even within 24 hours, patients next day came and said that मेरा ptosis कम हुआ है, and we have already seen if the total eyelid was drooping, it started moving. So ये results हमें बहुत अच्छे मिल रहे हैं. अभी कुछ समय patient जैसे ही मेरे पास आता है, first thing I do, even without any investigation, it may be not logical कि आप diagnose नहीं कर रहे हैं, but clinically we can diagnose case of mucormycosis with orbital involvement. So I started giving day one retrobulbar amphotericin B 3.5 milligram because systemic it is not available, but at least we can give that antifungal to an area where even systemic antifungal will not work very well because there will be necrosis and that medicine will not reach in that area. So giving local retrobulbar or peribulbar amphotericin B, in my opinion, is a very good treatment and it should be started as early as possible.
Sometimes we try each and everything, but the eyesight gone.
Yes.
There is nothing left. So when finally you decide that yes, now we have to accentuate the eye. This is the question from Dr. Nikhil Saxena. He wants to know when you want to accentuate the eye, what is the basic deciding line Yes, now nothing. We have to take it out.
Initially, the criteria was slightly different, but now after using Bifubulvar amphotericin B in many of the patients, where initially what we feel that this is the indication of exenteration, radical exenteration of the eye. Now we are not doing that much exenterations. So important signs and important things are, if patient is having no PN, central retinal artery or vein occlusion, total ophthalmoplegia, chemosis, proptosis, and with the help of MR brain contrast, if you are feeling that there is lot of involvement in posterior segment, orbital apex, and there are chances of this disease to go into the brain, then we should plan for exenteration. But before exenteration, we should always go for MRI, brain, orbit, and PNS and with contrast, so that each and every structure of orbit we can identify where the infection is there and whether we can save that eye. We can save otherwise only if there are chances of extending the infection to cerebral, then we should plan for exenteration.
All right.
So now the exenteration rate is decreased all over India.
Okay, fine. That's a common question. Everybody wants to know. This is to all panelists. Why there is such an increased incidence and all of a sudden of mucormycosis? Dr. Anil, what do you say? Why there is so much increase in the incidence of mucormycosis? Before this COVID-19, it was not that much. The spores are there in the air, they are ubiquitous, they are everywhere. But why such an increased incidence? Then I'll come to Dr. Atul, then Dr. Vilas, then Dr. Chawar.
In first wave also we had experienced at least 1 or 2 patients every month of post-COVID mucormycosis. Till January we used to have 1 or 2 patients, 2-3 patients of mucormycosis whole year. But after completion of March, the numbers have increased like anything. Means daily we used to have at least 4 to 5 patients. In May it crossed like everything. What I feel is that the COVID-19 new mutant, which is in prevalence nowadays, it has some factors which is causing some diabetogenic effect. Of course, we have all know that it is affecting the islet cells of pancreas also. It is causing diabetogenic effect to the extent that it is also causing diabetic ketoacidotic state for a very less amount of period. The people who are having good immunity or healthy people, healthy patients who are there, I feel like it is like a flash of a light in which the immunity drops to a level of diabetic ketoacidosis. That time people develop initial symptoms of mucormycosis. It halts there. In patients who are not having a very good immune system or uncontrolled sugar or any other comorbid condition, in those patients, the disease goes on and it spreads from nose to sinuses, sinuses to eye, and eye to brain also. Like that. What I feel personally.
Okay.
There are so many other factors also which causes mucormycosis, otherwise also.
Dr. Atul, what do you say? Dr. Atul?
I think Atul sir is mute.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Am
Dr. Atul, please.
I audible? Yeah.
Yeah, you're audible. My question is that to the everybody of all panelists, that why there is such an increased incidence of mucormycosis? What are the factors? What do you feel?
Basically, we have two things, sir. One is intrinsic, like this new mutant virus. This is creating immune dysregulation. Okay, so this is making those patients who are suffering from COVID prone for getting opportunistic infection, and mucor is one of those. On top of that, injudicious use of steroids, uncontrolled diabetes, injudicious use of higher antibiotics, quality hygiene, and other things which are making this mucor to develop very fast. You know, so basically there are two things. COVID itself is creating dysregulation of immunity, and on top of that, low immune.
You mean to say COVID itself is causing immunodeficiency, immune weakness? That
Immune
is you
dysregulation.
observed in last 1 year, correct?
Yes, yes.
Dr. Vilas, what's your opinion? Dr. Pramod, be ready with your answer. I'm coming to you. Dr. Vilas, please.
Yeah, good evening. Same. I think this COVID strain, mutant strain, is causing this change in lymphocyte neutrophil ratio and attacking pancreas islets, which are leading to this sudden increased surge of cases which we are experiencing nowadays. Yeah, over.
Okay. Dr. Pramod.
Good evening, everyone. Sir, as we know, the COVID-19 virus was a different one, and this is a mutant one, which is more immunogenic and more potent and more virulent. And this time, you will see the lack of oxygen also in the many cities of the India, and we use industrial oxygen, which was impure. And this time, we have to use a very high dose of steroids since from the beginning, and without any judicious control of the blood sugar. And we also use the non-invasive ventilation in every patient who is going to the acute respiratory failure. At that patient also, there is the nasomucosal barriers and normal physiological functions, and this causes a lot many the changes in the water was not that proper and very unhygienic. This for patient not even able to withdraw the NIV mask. He was on a continuous NIV mask with this RT feeding tube also. So I think there was a prolonged support, respiratory NIV supports, no oral hygiene was maintained. Patient was on a very high dosage of the steroids, as Dr. Atul said, higher antibiotic use since the beginning. And itself, virus itself is so immunogenic with such a virulence. It has spreaded at a various multi-cytokine storm was very earlier to get in the many parts like pancreas and heart, and because we know already after 6 or 7 days. So in our this course of COVID, this wave 2, we saw after 3-4 days only we saw the swellings into the nose, eyes, and so. But during the treatment only we just got the symptom. So I think these are the some of the culprit and overuse of steroids, oxygen, industrial oxygen, impure oxygens, very high flow oxygen, NIV, there may be a culprit for the more and more this mucormycosis.
Dr. OP, yes, please.
Sir, in my opinion, whatever the patients we are seeing, there are 25% of the patients, they are all home isolation patients and getting mucormycosis. So all these things are there, and we feel that they are the contributing factor. All these factors were available in first wave of corona also, but we didn't get the mucormycosis like this. So I personally feel that this is all because of the mutant virus in the second wave, which is giving this trouble. Because most of the patients are even non-vaccinated. More than 90% of the patients coming to us are they are not non-vaccinated. They have no vaccination, and because of this mutant virus only, we are getting this number of patients and all over India. I don't know what is the ratio, what is the percentage of mucormycosis out of India in Pakistan, Bangladesh, or whatever the countries are there. But in our country, everywhere, lot of patients, and most of them because of this virus only. हमारे ऑक्सीजन वही वैसे के वैसे ही है जैसे हमारे हॉस्पिटल पहले काम कर रहे थे वैसे ही आज भी काम कर रहे हैं। पहले भी वो स्टेरॉइड दे रहे थे, हो सकता है अभी स्टेरॉइड ज्यादा दे रहे हैं। यदि हम एक चीज और कंपेयर करें, डेथ रेट, यदि डेथ रेट कोविड के फर्स्ट वेव में और सेकंड वेव में हम कंपेयर करें तो 60 प्लस में ज्यादा था, अभी 60 इवन 20 to 60 में डेथ रेट ज्यादा है। So this is all because of mutant virus.
As Dr. Atul also rightly pointed out that it causes decrease in the immunity. Yes. Virus has got that quality in it that it decreases the immunity of the patient, and that results in all sorts of complications also. Dr. Pramod, you wanted to say something?
It's not what we used to, as a pulmonologist, we used to see a lot of fungal infection, but only rarely. But this time is a bombarding around. There's a 40% world population. We are seeing this mucormycosis, and the around incidence is 140 cases per million. This is the data rather, and as per you see, the 47% Indian patients are unaware of their diabetic status, and only 25 amongst there are well diabetic control. So this is diabetes is a very important factor in this COVID-19, this phase two, phase two wali jo bhi hui hai. And so mortality is very high. If it is invasive and you do anything, surgical parts and the medical part, even then the mortality is up to 70%. What this literature is mentioning.
Okay. Dr. Pramod, the next question is also with you. How to differentiate pulmonary mucormycosis and bacterial pneumonia? If a patient comes to you coughing, breathlessness, pain in chest, and RT-PCR was negative. Now you are a patient with RT-PCR negative. He has all other problems. How you are going to differentiate whether it's a bacterial pneumonia or it's a mucormycosis?
So as per se, the clinical presentation will be remain the same. The symptomatic will be same. The cough will be there, and the shortness of breath will be there. The fever will be there. But in case of pneumonia, hemoptysis is very. Bacterial pneumonia, hemoptysis is rare. But in case of this COVID pneumonia, hemoptysis is much more. Every patient coming with the cough, history, sputum, with the blood into the sputum, we used to get, because we are giving lot many patients a standard protocol for blood जो तो thinners होते हैं, like Lexan we are using in the patients. We have to reduce the dosages even, and even we have to stop the dosages. So to this differentiate, one is a clinical background. The acute bacterial pneumonia will create fever with chills and rigors. It will be lobar pneumonia. You will go to get the X-ray chest. And while in case of this COVID pneumonia, there's a peripheral shadows, and there are many changes into the streams. And for the confirmation, this blood count will be very high in bacterial pneumonia. Neutrophilic leukocytosis will be there. And secondly, if you go for this pro-calcitonin, the bacterial infection will be very high in case of bacterial pneumonia. So I think history-wise and radiological-wise and this blood test you can get.
You just mentioned radiology. What is the earliest sign and a diagnosed that yes, this is a particular sign and it categorically indicates yes, it's a mucormycosis?
Sir, usually CT is more diagnostic for this in this era, COVID era. Initially, in any patient of the COVID, there is a ground glass appearance. The peripheral shadows will be there. But in the COVID pneumonia, usually they present with the cavity lesions mostly. And then the two fungus are there. One is a mucormycosis and second is a aspergillosis. So this mucormycosis lesions will go to pulmonary nodule will be very high. Then maybe the pulmonary effusion will be there. It is more or less diagnostics of COVID associated mucormycosis. While those patients having the aspergillus infection, this bronchial wall will be the much more thickened, and there will be a much more shadows in the lower zones. So if there's a nodules, cavity lesions, then and sometimes the effusion, it is 100% the COVID associated mucormycosis, and other round it may be the aspergillosis, which also much more.
Dr. Anil Mittal wants to know how many cases of mucormycosis of lung involvement in current scenario.
So you see till date there are 10,000 patients are in India. You see they have been diagnosed, and in Indore only we are having more than say 250 patients who has been approached to the doctor's team. Like so, it just maybe the it is iceberg of the patient what we are seeing. So hardly amongst the 10 patients are there are hardly one patient we are getting the patient for uncontrolled diabetes are having the steroid overuse. Like.
And just yes or no, whether industrial oxygen is responsible for increasing incidence of mucor. Dr. Rajiv Manandane wants to know to Dr. Pramod. Yes or no?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Moving ahead, now we have got cerebral involvement. Dr. Atul Tapadia, expert, is with us. Dr. Atul, what is the percentage of CNS involvement? Dr. Nitin Tovar wants to know this. What is the percentage of CNS involvement?
By and large, mucormycosis involving CNS is not a very common thing. So if you see literature, if you are going through literature,
Little bit louder,
developed-
please.
yeah, if you go through literature in the Western countries, like in developed countries, you'll find in a lot of studies, there may be publication bias over there because they are based on a small case series and case presentations only. So they found it to be less than 1 per million population. But now in India, we are having epidemic and pandemic of mucormycosis due to multiple reasons. So cases are bound to increase. The other problem is that now these cases, they are coming very late. And even if they are coming at the right time, we are not having that much infrastructure. So cases are bound to be very high. So by and large, but it is not a very common. So say I would say we have seen as a team around 100 cases, maybe in 2.5 months. Around 100 cases. Not all were admitted at our hospital. Few were being referred to some other unit also because of unavailability of medicines and all those things. We found only 5 or 10 cases. And that too because of lack of medicines, or they were not getting medicine at the right time. And because of that, disease has progressed further. But by and large, it is not commonly involving CNS.
Mostly, Dr. Atul, a route of entry is from the nose, reaching to the sinuses, reaching to the eyeball, and then to the brain. What is the exact, in your opinion, as you are a very senior neurophysician at Bombay Hospital, seeing so many patients from morning to evening, what's your opinion? How this mucormycosis reaches from nose, or what is the route? How it reaches to the
So basically, you can have roots. Main root is this only, what you have seen. Through nose, goes into sinuses. As it is a invasive fungi, it goes into the orbit, it crosses orbit, and it goes in the brain. So this is the common route, and in this epidemic, we are seeing only this cases. But sometimes direct involvement of central nervous system is also being known. But they are not very common. They are common only those who are using IV drugs. IV drugs means all these, the drugs, what I mean is,
all right.
Drug abuses.
drug
abuses.
Right,
Addict.
right. Okay.
Addicts, yeah.
And what is your recommendation for neurosurgical treatment indication? When you shift from your neurophysician to neurosurgical, if fine, now this patient needs a neurosurgical intervention.
So by and large, when there is involvement of central nervous system, as we are saying, as I have told you, now few many patients we are getting, central nervous system involvement. So only we should not jump in referring them to neurosurgeon and offering them surgery because results are not very rewarding. They are associated with lot of morbidities and very uncertain benefits. So that is for sure. You have to take patients and their family into confidence that there is brain involvement. You can go for surgery, but you may or may not get rewarding results. Okay. So the three things which one should be clear, these are the red flag signs, like when there is a signs of raised intracranial pressure, like patient is losing consciousness, is developing deficit, is showing seizures, and on MRI you are seeing abscess or abscess-like presentation, which is going to kill patient because of raised intracranial pressure. That is an indication that you have to involve neurosurgeon and ask them to perform surgery with an explained prognosis that this is just debulking the disease. This is not going to cure the disease. Because once brain is involved, despite of all endoscopic nasal surgeries and intravenous infiltration and all those things, chances are very bleak that patient is going to survive. But there is intracranial pressure is one thing. Sometimes fungal meningitis can lead to obstructive hydrocephalus. In that case, probably you need to put shunt. So that is another indication. Sometimes it can spill over into spinal cord and can compress the spinal cord. So involvement of eloquent structures in the brain, and you want to save them with an excellent prognosis, you have to involve neurosurgeon and ask them to go for zero surgery. But the mainstay of treatment would be, because as I told you, in this epidemic, brain is getting involved only when you are not able to control disease in sinuses, orbit, and then it is going on. So despite being good surgery, early surgery, appropriate amphotericin dose, if disease is extending into brain, then chances are very poor that your patient is going to make.
Dr. Vilas, Dr. Nidhi wants to know, when do you suspect a case of sinoalveolar mucormycosis? She is a practicing dental surgeon. She has messaged me that please request Dr. Vilas sir to highlight about this. When do you suspect a case of sinoalveolar mucormycosis? What are the earliest symptoms?
Yeah, it is very important to note the early symptoms. Patient comes to us with variety of symptoms, but early symptoms are pain in one side of face, pain in the teeth of that area without any obvious cause. Common causes of pain are cavity or frontal condition, but teeth seems to be healthy, but patient is having pain. Numbness along infraorbital branch of maxillary nerve, that is numbness along the lateral part of nose, lower lid and upper lid, heaviness or stone-like feeling of the upper 5 anterior teeth, pain means headache and eye ache as the patient tells us, and all this pain is so severe that it is not subsiding by taking routine NSAIDs. So a severe pain, paresthesia or anesthesia, and these are the early signs. If we go diseases progress, then we can see the swollen gums or boggy gums. Means you can see some intraoral draining sinuses without patient being aware of it, or there can be small openings on the palatal wall or small swellings in the palate, particularly midline or lateral side, which patient might not have noticed. Discharging. So while examining, we have to carefully examine the gums and the palate also. Of course, in advanced cases, diagnosis becomes simpler when we see a necrosed palate or swelling over the face or involving the skin or eyesight. In advanced cases, diagnosis is simple, but it is important that we diagnose it early, particularly with pain, and when we are not correlating the pain to the routine sign and symptoms which patient is giving.
All right. How do you proceed? Means, what are your basic plans to take care of such kind of patients? Like starting from early to advanced disease.
Yeah.
How stepwise you go ahead?
I mean, we treat, suppose there are very early signs with help of swab, that is confirming that what it is, taking CT and MRI will show the sinus involvement. If multiple if sinuses are involved, of course, FES will be the choice. If boggy gums are there, there is discharge from gums, or there is a palatal swelling, or there is a discharge from palate, it means that bone has got necrosed. So, or in case advanced it is. So when there is a necrosis of bone, we treat it on the principles of the way we treat osteomyelitis, that is supportive treatment, medical treatment and surgical treatment. And we tell the patient the same, so that is, many times it is in the mind of patient that if surgery is done, everything will be all right. So we have to explain to them that all these factors are there. Supporting will include management of hypoglycemia, uremia or systemic condition or deficiency is having, medical antifungal drugs, which are the mainstay, and surgical is basically the debridement of the necrosed tissue we are dealing with. And when we study the CT and MRI, as you have shown in your slides also, there the involvement is apart from bone, it is involvement on retroantral planes, along the masseter muscle, along the temporalis muscle, along the fascia. In case of orbital cellulitis, you see the picture that along the rectus muscle or along these capsules. So the point is, in surgical, if we talk from oral cavity point of view, what I can say is that it includes whenever there is first discharge from gums and mobility of the teeth. Again, patient might not be aware. You bimanually palpate it, you can see that teeth are mobile. Even if slight teeth are mobile, be sure that bone is necrosed. So when we raise a flap, make a test cavity on the bone. If blood is coming, the bone is vital. But most of time when with the symptoms we are taking patient into OT, no blood is coming, the bone is totally necrosed. Test, if we extract a tooth, routinely we get bleeding from it. There will be dry bone. Dry bone, go on removing it. Inferior in early cases when other palatal signs are not there, inferior maxillectomy and curettage of maxillary sinus of that side, and in combination with curettage of other sinuses by an ENT surgeon. That is inferior maxillectomy and sinus curettage, whichever sinuses are involved. And when palate is also involved, it goes to removal of that part of palate, or it can proceed to hemimaxillectomy or other things. But when we are dealing with it, we also deal with, we have to take care of the surrounding soft tissue. I mean, infection is surrounding soft tissue also. Because if you are opening up a case, if you can go beyond it and check for the necrosed tissue and irrigate or make some draining spots at different levels. As the same principle of an aggressive infection.
Dr. Vilas, before going to next question to you, there is a question for Dr. Pramod about there are different colors. Dr. Pramod, black fungus, white fungus, and yellow fungus. You have to differentiate into enlighten on it. And before that, I'm coming back to Dr. Vilas. One of the oral maxillofacial surgeon, Amit Verma, he is resident over there. He is asking, is dental plaque or dental calculus responsible for development of mucormycosis? And another question was also from Dr. Chanel Kothari. She wanted to know about the mandibular involvement of mucormycosis. So please answer this too. Till that time, Dr. Pramod, you be ready with all the three colors: black, yellow, white.
Yeah. So I think two questions. One is mandibular involvement. Earlier it was not heard of before COVID-19. Now we are getting case again. Here there is a paresthesia along the lower lip. That is the involvement of inferior alveolar nerve. I think we in our department we have seen 5 or 6 cases of mandibular involvement. But the question is, it is difficult to explain to the origin. In maxilla is very close to the nasal cavity. I mean, paranasal sinuses are there. Maxilla is a cancellous bone, so it is easy to, it can penetrate directly also. But in case of mandible, very difficult. Is it mucor or it is because of thromboembolic events, which is leading to necrosis of vessel and necrosis of that. But whichever cases we have seen, almost half of the mandible goes away. Means you have to go on removing both. But if you are taking for the surgery, you have to go on removing. You don't find any drop of blood or any healthy bone. It is just you go on scrapping till you feel that only left outer cortical plate is left. You want to maintain the shape of the patient.
Dr. Pramod, please highlight about three colors.
Yes, sir. Sir, as we know now, the black fungus, white fungus, and yellow fungus are being very talked about in this COVID second waves. We know the white fungus, that is mostly candida, which is normal inhibitants. Whenever the immunity goes low down, steroid load is high, and some infection. If you are giving antibiotics and even in probiotics are not sufficient to get replenish your internal GI flora, you get the white fungus, and that can be cured by the normal antifungal drugs. And black fungus we are discussing nowadays, around 10,000 patients are being already been diagnosed in India, and much more it's been in this COVID second wave, diabetic and prolonged use of steroids and nowadays yellow fungus is usually found in reptiles, and they are being very fatal. They are those internally only, and hardly getting any symptoms like low energy levels and lethargy, low grade fever, and suddenly it just goes to the blood stream and get very serious. Because we are knowing the color of the fungus is because of the growth of the fungus. It may be white, black. We should not be confused with the colors. The color can be changing like from anyone to anyone. It depends upon the how the growth of the fungus is there. The commonly fungal infection, what we know, the Candida, Aspergillosis, Mucormycosis, and this Coccidomycosis and the Cryptococcus and Histoplasmosis. So they are different, but among them, the three are very important: Mucormycosis, Candida albicans. In recently, in this Gangadhar hospitals, they have found a patient with the intestinal perforation, and they found the white flakes of the white flakes of this fungus Candida, which were innocent in nature initially. What we see usually has been creating a problem like perforation. So this was the first study, and one of the study in Ghaziabad, in the same patient, they found white, black, and yellow fungus, all the three fungus only in a single patient of the COVID. So these are allowing me probably this is the first, second patient we into this
All right.
literature.
Okay. Thank you so much. Now, in general, especially Dr. OP, Dr. OP Agrawal is with us. You have prepared some beautiful slides. If you can titrate them, and if you want to share them, till that time because we are just here together to learn from each other and to become more wiser. In our trial run, you had prepared some slides or everything. So keep them ready, and we will have a glimpse of that. Till that time, Dr. Atul, people are asking about why this itraconazole aggravates mucormycosis. Anybody of us, we are just discussing. There is a question from, yeah, please, Dr. Anil. Dr. Anil, you can highlight.
I have read somewhere that itraconazole as well as voriconazole, they act upon the commensal fungi of nasal and paranasal sinus origin, and because of this factor, mucormycosis is more enhanced. I have read this thing somewhere, and I have heard this thing in some of the webinar only.
All right. Okay. Dr. Pramod Jhawar wants to say something. Please, Dr. Pramod.
So there is one very much interesting. The patient of the all COVID are taking immuno booster doses of the iron and zinc, and so iron overload of iron was also one of the culprit. They get reactivations of reticular endothelial system, and they also promote the more formation of the mucormycosis. And apart from all the patients of the infection, neutropenia is much more common when there's a when the COVID infect in the bone marrow. We also came across 4 patients in this COVID second wave having the effect on the bone marrow. So their platelet and hemoglobin blood count are always normal, will be subnormal, and they have given this growth stimulating factor, and they again come to the normal level. So I think
It's fine. Before Dr. OP starts, there's a prophylactic treatment part. I had a discussion with my professor, Dr. R.K. Mundra sir, then Dr. Yamini, who is head of the department, and we three were discussing that about the prophylaxis. Dr. Anil, you being ENT surgeon, what do you say as the spores are in the air and the route of entry is from the nose? Saline nasal douche or saline nasal wash is going to play any role, number one. Number two, as we all are aware, the moment we have started our life in medical field, povidone iodine, the povidone iodine gargles, it is virucidal, it is bactericidal, it is fungicidal. And as we all are aware that povidone iodine is 99% efficacious against COVID-19. Can we use povidone iodine 0.5%, only 0.5% nasal spray, oral spray? Oral spray, oral gargles are, ready-made gargles are available. My question to all panelists is that, can this play any role in prophylaxis against mucormycosis also? First, Dr. Anil, please.
Definitely, I'm using saline spray as well as sole spray and soda bacar wash in all post-COVID patients who are coming with the possibility of mucormycosis, who are rather having phobia of having mucormycosis. Saline spray and soda bacar spray are fine. I was using betadine, diluted betadine solution also for nasal washes in my as a prophylactic solution as well as in my post-op patients also. But few days back, I have attended webinar with Dr. Satish Jain, and he strictly said that povidone iodine hinders the movement of cilia in the sinus cavity. So from that day, I stopped it using it.
I had a question with him, same. I also attended Dr. Satish webinar.
You know, sir,
and
Dr.
I
Satish
asked
Jain,
him.
you know that Dr. Satish Jain's word is last word.
Yeah. He said about better rather than this prophylaxis. This is basically because of the decreased immunity of
Yeah.
the patient that the patient develops mucormycosis. What Dr. Atul also said. So he said like that. But in our day-to-day experience, what povidone iodine, I think at least because it is not going to cause any harm. But he is saying about the 0.5% that can be used, and I think there is no clinical trials and the study which says that it will be harmful. I am searching literature since months together about this, and yes,
No, with
Yeah, please.
when I'm doing the salvage surgery, means when the sinus mucosa is fine, limited disease is there, when I can spare much of the sinus mucosa, I am not using povidone iodine. But when I'm doing extensive debridement till skull base, infratemporal fossa, that is only bone, isn't it? So when only bone is there, why I should not be feared about ciliary movement or ciliary function.
exactly.
So I'm using betadine solution there.
And my point is that if a patient has got a COVID, mostly what we have observed in few months that that patient develops mucormycosis within 15 to 20 days to 1 month.
Yeah.
This is the maximum time duration we have seen that these patients develop mucormycosis. So I think doing this nasal spray of 0.5% povidone iodine is not going to harm just for 15-20 days, 1 month at the most.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion. Because what harm is going to, once a patient is a positive case of mucormycosis, it's a great burden, it's a great harm, it's a sometimes loss
Yeah.
of the life. So for temporarily ciliary movements are hampered, it's okay. In this COVID era, people have taken steam 3 to 5 times a day. That shades all ciliated squamous epithelium completely and has resulted in atrophic changes also. But I don't think there is any harm. And even Dr. Undra sir, he agreed. Dr. Yamini's statement came in one of the leading newspapers that yes, nasal drops, there is no harm in prevention like that. Okay, fine. Let's go towards Dr. O.P. Agarwal. Please, Dr. O.P., share your slides.
Oh, Dr. Subir sir, I was not knowing that it is only a discussion, so that's I prepared this slideshow. Just how to manage this COVID-associated mucormycosis from ophthalmic point of view. So my job is very easy with your presentation. Everything is there, so I'm not going to take much time. So you have already explained about the mucormycosis and everything. So I'm not going to talk anything in detail. Factors affecting immunity. This is also we have already discussed. In my opinion, it is the mutant virus itself which is very important cause of decreased immunity, and we all know very little about the effect of this virus till today. Within few days, definitely we'll get how this virus is affecting and we are getting more number of mucormycosis. So still, in my opinion, it is an uncleared issue till today, because lot many patients are not admitted in the hospital. They are home isolated and getting young patient 18-20 years of age, only very mild symptoms, COVID positive. There are three things which are important to discuss about mucormycosis. Number one is COVID positive. Number two is they are either having uncontrolled diabetes, or they got diabetes due to COVID. And number three, most of them are non-vaccinated. Most of them. So these three things are very important, and we have to find out a cause from this three. How we will do, I don't know. We are not the experts and to find out, but we have to wait for exact cause. The one thing which is important is decreased immunity of mucous membrane, which is all we know, and when lot many people are discussing that mucous membrane of our nasal bone and sinuses, the immunity of that area, particularly local immunity, is decreasing. That is also one of the cause, and that is because of mutant virus. So predisposing factors we have already discussed. Dr. Subhajan elaborated very well. Signs and symptoms are already. If I'll talk about the ophthalmic signs and symptoms, we all know about blurred vision, diplopia, ptosis, proptosis, external restriction of extraocular movement, eye movements, periorbital edema, chemosis, everything. The staging also we have discussed. Stage 1 is nasal mucosa and sinuses, orbital involvement and brain involvement. So how to treat in stage 1, how to treat in stage 2, how to treat in stage 3, we already have discussed. This is the picture of central retinal artery occlusion, where HAV red spot is visible. So the brain involvement. Diagnosis, Dr. Subir explained very well. I am not going to talk anything. The only thing which is very important here is MRI brain orbit PNS with contrast. So for treatment part, with contrast is very important. How to continue ophthalmic treatment with medicines and retrobulbar amphotericin B, or we should go for exenteration. So for that, MRI brain orbit and PNS with contrast is an important diagnostic step. So treatment also we have discussed. Here I would like to emphasize one thing. Even on clinical suspicions of mucormycosis, we can start amphotericin B in low dose like 3 to 5 milligram per kilogram body weight daily for 7 days, even if we are suspicious. But unfortunately, we don't have amphotericin B available. Retrobulbar, I have already explained that it is 3.5 milligram per ml. The doses and the repetition, usually in initial stage we repeated the injection every 5th to 7th day, then we come it to every 3rd day, and now we have started giving even alternate days also, depending on the condition of eye. So orbital involvement and CNS involvement we already discussed. If there are bilateral orbital involvement and CNS involvement, the prognosis is very poor. So these are the indications of exenterations which I have already explained. This is score used to decide orbital exenteration. According to different symptoms, grade of symptoms, and we have to decide. If the score is more than 23, then we have to plan. These are the different scoring by different college of arts. So if you'll permit, I can present a video of exenteration. If there is no need, we can leave it. So there is no need of video of exenteration. How we do it?
I think to all panelists, I would request to give few words about prophylaxis, prevention, means at the end you should give that key message to our fraternity that how we should go ahead. Dr. OP, first you complete your this
This is
presentation, and in the meanwhile, there is a question from Dr. Chanel Kothari to Dr. Anil Gwaliarkar that can we use potassium permanganate nasal wash? So Anil, when turns comes to you, please answer that. Answer of question of Dr. Chanel Kothari, potassium permanganate nasal wash. Yeah, Dr. OP, please.
Sir, so what first question you asked me, how I'll give few words for prevention of the disease. So prevention of the disease, the most important here is the early diagnosis. Prevention, I don't think prevention, we have already discussed everything, and many of ENT colleagues and ophthalmologists suggest that this diluted betadine can be used 0.5%. Some have advocated that in xylophane 4% you can add betadine and with that get used. But I don't know that how much sinuses, whether this spray or this drops, nasal drops, will reach up to sinuses, I don't know. Whether it will reach up to sinuses or not. Number one thing. In my opinion, early diagnosis and early treatment, early intervention is very important. Initially, when this disease was started, we have discussed with administration also. I have meetings with Dr. Gwaliarkar was also there, and we have discussed in detail that this disease required multidisciplinary approach. We have 2-3 meetings with administration and to start, because एक patient मेरे पास आता है, मैं फिर उसको हॉस्पिटल में एडमिट करता हूँ, फिर मैं ENT वालों को बोलता हूँ, फिर मैं फिजिशियन को बोलता हूँ, उसमें 24 घंटे से 48 घंटे निकल जाते हैं। एक ही जगह पे जितना जल्दी से जल्दी हम पेशेंट को डायग्नोस करें, जितना जल्दी से जल्दी हमारे ENT कलीग who are doing 24 hours services, जितना जल्दी debridement करें. After debridement also there is some problem that once you did debridement, there are few of our colleagues after 7 days to 15 days they again see the patients. In my opinion, every 3rd or 5th day you have to again do endoscopy, and whatever the HR is there, you have to resolve. This is my opinion. What ENT fraternity is doing is good, but every 3rd to 5th day, removal of fungus from the sinuses is very important, and at the same time they are doing some orbidotomy also, endoscopic orbidotomy, that is also good. And with that, if we give local amphotericin B, I think this approach, multidisciplinary approach, can prevent the disease to progress very fast.
What do you say about amphotericin gel? Is it useful?
No, we have not used, because amphotericin gel is not to be used in eye. Sometimes if corneal involvement, if chemosis, if there is a fungal endophthalmitis, we usually give fortified amphotericin eye drops only on those cases. Initially, when this disease started, we also started eye drops also, but the drops are not effective because the disease is in the.
Okay, fine. Right. Thank you, Dr. O.P. Agrawal. Now I am coming towards Dr. Anil Gwaliarkar. Next, I'll request Dr. Atul. Please be ready for your final comments. Then Dr. Vilas, then Dr. Pramod to conclude. Dr. Anil, please.
I would like to continue with the Dr. O.P. Agrawal sir's conversation. What we are doing means whenever we suspect any patient that is having mucormycosis, start from the day first, we start with the second line antifungal treatment like posaconazole or something, so that we can steal some time for debridement or some time for starting amphotericin B, as you know that it is not available nowadays. As early as possible, debridement is the rule.
Yes.
Whatever possible debridement, the first debridement is the most important debridement. Whatever disease, my principle is to overdo.
Yeah.
rather than under 2. Whatever possible debridement I have to do, I have to do it in first setting only. Again, after 3 to 4 days, 5 days, we have to do a check endoscopy. Wherever there is any necrosis, HR, usually means by God's grace, many of the patients do not have fresh lesions in 5th or 6th day endoscopy, check endoscopy with us. But yeah, definitely, there are some patients whose immunity is not very good, whose sugar control is not very good. Even after best possible interventions, their sugar comes and downs, like goes ups and down. In those patients, there are fresh ashars, like on the other side of turbinate or on the side of sinuses in the septum. For them, we go for repeat debridement. So, 5th to 6th day, we go for repeat debridement, and I think they are doing very good now. Some of the patients whose sugar is not still controlled, then they develop some neurological complications. We have 4 or 5 patients who have developed neurological complications also, but we are managing on amphotericin B higher doses with them. Second thing, what sir was telling about orbital accentration. We are doing orbital clearance too, means like debulking of disease from the orbit. Whatever fat is disease, we are debulking that too. Means sparing optic nerve, means even if it is a blind eye, involvement of orbit is there, orbital in retroorbital space or around the globe. We are debulking that too, so that we can reduce the load of the disease, so that we can prevent the spread to brain.
Yeah. And that is very important. Very important.
And now, means learning from the previous cases, now we have started going up to cavernous sinus too. So whatever possible disease debridement we can do, we should do in the first step only.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chanel madam's question was there, na?
Prophylactic nasal wash with potassium permanganate, Caminofol.
I have never used it, sir. I have never used it. Even I was thinking of hydrogen peroxide also, but I could not use it. I think I am having an old school thought. Still happy with nasal wash with sodium bicarbonate solution and saline.
All right.
I think washing with them is sufficient.
All right. All right. Yes, Dr. Atul, your final words.
The final word is, as soon as you start, if you have diagnosed the disease, you start treatment as soon as possible, as both of my colleagues have told. So you have to involve, it is a multi-specialty approach. So if there is, and the initial front is on the sinus. So basically you have to involve ENT surgeon. What I am doing, as Anil is over busy, is operating almost 5 to 6 cases per day. And if I am seeing patient in my OPD, I give them a call. I have told them, I have instructed them that you keep your mobile open. I am going to give you a call. Even if you are in OT, you pick up my phone because I am not going to give you a call for unnecessary reasons.
Yes.
So what I'm doing is, I'm asking you, most of these patients, those who are coming to OPD, either they are coming with psychosis or they are coming with a lot of films which is showing a lot of diseases, And as soon as you admit them, they expect ENT surgeon to start their process as early as possible, which is humanly impossible for him because he's working right from day to night, he's an OT. So he's hardly getting any time. So I asked him on mobile phone, whether will you be able to perform surgery tomorrow? I'm admitting I'm doing all workup. I'm keeping this ready, posted for surgery tomorrow. Will you able to take this patient for surgery? If he says yes, I will be able to take, I'll be admitting this patient to my institute. Otherwise, I'm going to talk to other ENT surgeons. They are also having, so I'm involving, it is not only multi-specialty involvement in one hospital. This is an epidemic and you have to work like it in the whole city, whosoever is free, whosoever is there, whosoever infrastructure. You have to refer them those cases. The idea behind all this thing is not to start treatment as early as possible. Not only patient is panicking, you are also panicking. Because on one hand, you are telling your patient that this is a very invasive disease, this fungus is very notorious. As soon as by the time they come to us, already it has gone beyond sinuses and sometimes up to orbit. And as a neurologist, I have to scare them. And I'm admitting them, and if someone is not seeing them for 3-4 days, then I am, morally not accepting this. So start treatment as early possible. Wheresoever you are getting treatment facility under one roof. That is the bottom line. Sooner the better.
All right. All right. Fantastic. Dr. Anil, you wanted to answer something about Dr. Atul said?
Want to continue with the Dr. Atul Tapadia sir. That same thing I am also doing. Whatever comes to me means what the patient selection is more important. If the patient is coming just with the alveolar pain and alveolar pathology, solitary maxillary sinus pathology, I directly give him the number of Dr. Vilas Nevaskar. I ask him that if I have to call him here, you better go to him and get it done there because he can do isolated things there also. So all such patients means we have to discuss it. It's not like that one person can do each and everything. Ophthalmologist, the work of ophthalmology should be done by them only. And wherever there is a solitary lesion like this, I think maxillofacial surgeons are doing good work.
Dr. Rajendra Mehta, a very senior chest physician and allergy specialist, he has raised a question. Many patients developing mucormycosis while they are COVID positive. Dr. Anil, mind it, they are COVID positive. And doctors, surgeons are not operating on COVID positive patients. What should we do?
I have operated 15 to 17 COVID positive patients of mucormycosis.
All right.
March.
You are operating.
Whatever comes today also we are operating that.
Fine. So this is a nice answer to Dr. Rajendra Mehta sir. Dr. OP, you wanted to add something?
Yes,
Dr. Vlad, you be ready, please.
I just want to request all ENT surgeons of our city that this is an epidemic. We all should work for our patients. I have discussed with many of ENT surgeons that many of them are not doing endoscopic sinus surgery. It is my humble request that as amphotericin B is not available, our responsibility is increasing. So at least we debulk the disease. We do debridement. Even if medicine is not there, at least we can prevent the extension to orbit, extension to teeth, extension to sinuses, cerebral. So if you clean the sinuses, at least we can prevent the extension of the disease.
All right. We are reaching to the end. Yeah, Dr. Atul, you want to add something?
So this COVID positive state can remain for long. So we have to see patient is really suffering from COVID illness.
Little bit louder. Atul, little bit louder, please.
Basically, COVID positive itself doesn't cause any complication unless patient is in crisis or in a storm. So sometimes dead virus can lead to COVID positive state for a longer duration. You make an RT-PCR even after a month of patient is improved clinically from COVID illness. And at that time he may develop mucormycosis. So one should not deny treatment for these kind of patients. I think if you are hospital and administration, they have got different policies. They allow you to operate, and if you have got all protecting gadgets, you should.
Right. So final words from Dr. Vilas Nevaskar.
Yes, because some of the symptoms in oral cavity are quite early. So I think that they can be taken care of, say a small ulcer or swelling on the palate or pain in infraorbital nerve, mobility of teeth. They are early signs. If the patients are caught at that stage and treated, lesser amount of treatment can give good results. Then from surgical point of view, I agree with Dr. Anil, aggressive debridement, and many of our partial maxillotomy or total maxillotomy cases, we are giving open dressings. So because anyway we are doing open surgeries, that's why we are giving open dressings and change it frequently as we do in other infections, that is change in a day, every alternate day or so, or depending upon the series of infection, stage of the infection. That's all.
All right. Fine. Wonderful. In between, there is a question coming last to Dr. Pramod. Before that, methylene blue. Lots of videos and our senior Dr. Garge, Dr. Sudhir Mahashabde, friend Dr. Suhas Bande, Dr. Puttaraj KR, any role of methylene blue 0.1% solution as nasal drops or nebulization? Any of the panelists, any of the specialists? Methylene blue. Anybody tried methylene blue?
Sir, I just had Dr. Atul Nahar sir who saw more than 8,000 patients and used extensively methylene blue. And none of the patients had developed mucormycosis. He says personally, he is having all the numbers of all the patients who are moderate to severe patients of COVID-19 second wave use methinyl blue as a nebulizer twice daily in his active phase of disease, and none has developed mucormycosis.
All right.
He was
That's
one
a
statement.
positive thing.
Yeah.
It is a
That
good
study
thing.
should be published.
Yes.
That's very good. So now final words from Dr. Pramod Jawar, and with that, after this, we'll conclude the session.
I think, sir, the most of the overuse of this steroid, because it is mostly patients are being treated by the pulmonologists, internal medicines, and that are plus of a physician where the awareness, the use of steroid has to be, because we know already whenever the patient oxygen level is normal, no need to get is used to prescribe steroid. But whenever the patient comes to the hospital and when his CT score is very high and the cytokine storms, then the things become very difficult. These only low dose steroids are being indicated for mild to moderate patients. In severe patient, I just see the prescription 1 gram per day for 3-4 days. Like this is the use burden of the steroid onto the body. And even the patient when they discharge, they are not being at home properly followed by this hypoglycemia, this raised blood sugar. And so this is the one of the most area where we must say the blood sugar is targeted in the normal range is very essential. Secondly, physician sees initially the referral should be by the physician to early to ENTs and ophthalmologist and neurophysician, because he is stuck up to the physician initially for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and when he sees the nose is swelling and then swelling, it is early clinical acumen to be important to have the differential diagnosis for the mucormycosis. And you just, because many patients are the 40 plus ages, they are using the immunosuppressant and for this hyper some sorts of joint pains and some malignancies and some sorts of diseases. Steroid burden already been is very high over. So this immune system, when there was a weak and when your hypoglycemia is not been controlled and the clinician acumen for the early diagnosis is not there and patient's awareness is not there, then the things become for the ENT referral, ophthalmology referral, neuro will be late. So on this the steroid use and the early referral is essential to refer this patient to the proper specialist.
All right. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Pramod. Now we are coming to the end of this session, interactive session. Yeah, Dr. Upi.
Can I ask one question with our ENT colleagues? That once we have did the debridement and we clean the area with amphotericin B. Can this amphotericin B local cleaning can be done repeatedly every third or fifth day? Local.
Many of
We are using retrobulbar amphotericin B. That can be used to control the disease, because in that case we require very little amount of amphotericin B. Even a 1 vial of amphotericin B can be used for 50 patients. A small sponge can be soaked with amphotericin B 3.5 milligram or 5 milligram, and then it can be cleaned with that swab the local area of sinuses. So that at least if we are not able to provide the IV medicines, we can at least treat those patients with local amphotericin B. Will it be helpful? This is in my mind. It was my
Can be
thinking.
tried. Can be tried.
initially we used to pack the sinus cavity with amphotericin B soaked packs.
Yeah.
I think almost all patients we used to have this policy, but I never had any special advantage of that. I never saw any special advantage.
Okay.
Now, what debridement means? Debridement means removal of total disease, whatever possible with safe margin which are bleeding. Isn't it?
Okay.
When bleeding margin comes, we feel that disease is not there.
Yeah.
Unless and until there is some disease, there is no use of amphotericin B lavage or wash, whatever you can
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But I just, as I told about Fungizome gel, means I just saw 3 days, 4 days back some webinar. They were applying the Fungizome gel and they were packing the nasal cavity with that also, sinus cavity with that also. I think that gel could be helpful as far as sinuses are concerned,
Okay.
because it stays for a longer time. When we apply the amphotericin B solution, I don't think it stays for a longer time because there is all bone. It doesn't stay on the bone.
Okay.
Either packing is good or application of that fungizome gel. That will be fine.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, please, Dr. Atul.
So logically, this packing is not going to help because this is an invasive. The whole scenario is like this is an invasive disease. So what you are seeing in surface, there is much more disease beyond that surface also, and that is why it is crossing from one chamber to another chamber and another chamber. So you may see in endoscope that only sinuses are being involved, but on MRI you may find that sometimes it can stay orbit and can reach up to the brain through some other sinuses. So it is an invasive disease. So this local packing is not going to help. You have to give systemic antifungal. There is no shortcut to
All
it.
right.
If it is available, use only systemic antifungal.
Fine. Dr. Pramod, you wanted to add something?
So this mucormycosis is having the very propensity for angio invasion and causing the thrombosis. And so the later part of the part is becoming the necrosed. So where there is a blood vessel, it is going to invade and causing the macrothrombosis, and just is going to propagate the infarction and further invasion and destruction of the.
So with this, we are at the end of the session, and before I hand over session to Dr. Kanaram Patel, let me say lot of thanks. Everybody is so busy. I can understand Dr. Anil Gwaliarkar sleeping with the endoscopes and debriders. I can understand. I am really no words. Dr. Anil, Dr. Pramod is so busy. Dr. OP is so busy. Dr. Atul, I requested. First I approached Dr. Atul. Atul said, "Sir, spare me." I said, "No, I'm not going to spare you. We have got a long association. You have to come." Glenmark is requesting me, and Glenmark boss Dr. Mr. Alok Malik. He is a childhood friend of me. He started his career, and even I started my career together. So we have got such a long relations. And once Glenmark is approaching me for a scientific feast, I just cannot say no. Thank you so much, Dr. Atul. Anil, I appreciate you are just my younger brother, Dr. Pramod, Dr. OP, or Dr. OP is so busy. Just no words.
बहुत आराम है sir.
I can understand. And
I don't
on the
do
top of
exact.
that, I think Guinness Book of World Records is going to go towards Dr. Vilas Navaskar for maxillectomies. He is so busy. You won't believe, just sharing. Since around Dr. Tana, I think we were together preparing everything since last 10, 12, 15 days now. And I requested, I formed a panel and I requested everybody, Dr. Vilas also. Today afternoon, sometime.
Yeah, I'm a bit lazy person.
I can understand how busy he is. And the
Everyone wants to be lazy like you.
And thank you so much, all my friends. No words. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir.
Over to Dr. Kanaram Patel.
Thank you so much, sir. And it was a treat to hear you all on this very important topic, mucormycosis screening, diagnosis, and management. And I know all doctors who are there on other side must have experienced the same, and hope they have got the answers, the queries they had. A big thank you to Dr. Subir Jain, sir, not only moderating this session, but also for his effort toward making this informative session happen. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation for Dr. Pramod Jawar, sir, for his insight from pulmonology point of view. Further, we are grateful to Dr. O.P. Agarwal, sir, for sharing some pearls from his great experience in treating mucormycosis patients. I would like to express our sincere thanks to Dr. Atul Tapadia, sir, for his giving a coverage from neurological perspective. Also, wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Anil Gwaliarkar, sir. He has shared much information regarding the treatment, management, diagnosis, debridement, all, for providing comprehensive inputs regarding management of the mucormycosis. I am also very thankful, grateful to Dr. Vilas Navaskar, sir, for sharing his knowledge regarding management of the mucormycosis of oral cavity, specifically including bones and denture. Finally, I will very grateful and thank you. I will take opportunity to place an on record our hearty thanks to all doctors who attended this session by taking time out from their weekend schedule and gaining some knowledge and to use this knowledge to treat the patients they are coming. Finally, thank you to Inmark team, particularly Mr. Ram Prakash Sharma, who worked in background to make this program successful. Thank you, Ram Prakash. And finally, thank you, Medicines team, for their technical support. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.